Hey guys, it's Kev here. Welcome to the Agentic AI Masterclass. In this video, I'm going to show you how Agentic AI agents have transformed the capabilities of AI forever. And I'm going to give you guys 3 insane examples that I'm using in real time with my AI agency. And by the end of this video, you guys are going to know exactly how to build and launch your own agentic employee team and how it will completely replace what we previously thought AI agents were capable of. See, when you think of AI agents, you're probably thinking of an automation drag and drop platform like n8n or make.com that creates streamlined automations. But with agentic AI workflows like the ones you're gonna see today, we aren't just building automations. We are building entire AI employees that run complicated workflows on command, improve on their own, and don't stop working until they get the job done, tackling any error in their way. And the best part? These agents are constantly improving and evolving like a Pokemon, all on its own. Trust me when I say this is the absolute future of where AI is going, and we are all extremely early. And if you don't believe me, in the summer of this year, I came to a realization of where this whole AI agent wave was going, and I launched my AI startup CreatorOS, which is an AI operating system that was built with this agentic concept in mind. Now with the release of AI models like Gemini 3 and Claude Opus 4.5, this theory has come true and AI operating systems have hit the mainstream. And this has allowed my agency to go to a whole new level, and we are charging towards $100,000 a month by automating entire social presences for internet-led businesses. So if you're looking to learn about the newest trend in AI, you've come to the right place. And I'm honored to break down this Agentic AI Masterclass for you. And I've split this course up into 4 sections. We're first gonna start off by just showing you guys 3 working examples of agentic workflows that are being used to generate businesses revenue in real time inside of my AI agency and how they're streamlining complex workflows. And I want to show you guys before explaining, just so you guys can actually wrap your mind around how insane this new era of AI agents actually is. After that, we're gonna get into the education, and I'm gonna explain in a deep dive how agentic workflows operate, where they originated from, and how to use them, as well as why they're actually so impactful for businesses. The next step in this course is going to break down the framework that I created called the II framework, which allows us to create consistent agents that give us exactly what we're looking for. This is also a framework that lets us run multiple AI employees at the same time in parallel inside one simple code base. And these tasks that you're gonna see the agent complete used to take hours on end. Now, it's just a couple of minutes, and it's literally just one prompt. And after you guys learn everything, we're gonna go back into Cursor or Anti-Gravity or any IDE that you guys are using, and we're gonna build your first agentic AI system from scratch that you guys can follow along with. On top of that, guys, I have released my first version of what I'm calling Agentic OS into the No Code Academy, which has 5 built-in workflows that you can go grab and implement into your own agency right now. It also goes without saying that you absolutely do not need to know how to code. You don't have to be a developer to follow along in this tutorial, and you're gonna see that the agents are gonna do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. It's pretty freaking magical. So let's hop right into the computer. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please hit this video with a like and subscribe. But let's get right into it. I'm going to show you guys example number 1. All right, guys, so here we are in the code base, and I want to quickly talk about the II framework that I alluded to in the intro here, and only 2 folders that we really need to care about for this agentic operating system is the implementation folder and the instruction folder. Now, the instruction folder is markdown files, which basically just has really clean information that explains how our specific workflows actually operate. And so when we tell our agents to go and do something, it'll go and read each one of these instruction files, and it'll pass the instruction to the implementation script to actually go ahead and conduct that tool call. If that sounded like a lot of word spaghetti, don't worry, let's just run through this first example. So our first example here, guys, is actually getting analytics for an instantly email campaign that we're running on behalf of one of our clients. Now, this is just an example, but this agent has access to my entire instantly API, and that means that it can go and run different scripts to get our analytics, to start email campaigns. And in this case, guys, what we're gonna try and do is we want the agent in Cursor to actually grab the newest performance data from our instantly email campaign, and we want it to store it in this database, which will then show our user on the front end how each day is performing. And so now that you guys see that it's December 11th, 2025, and this field hasn't been filled out yet, I'm just going to open up Cursor and I'm going to send in that message. So it says, please check my instantly campaign analytics and store them in the database. So here we can see that the agent is planning the next moves, and it says, I'll check your instantly campaign analytics. And so what it's doing now is it's running a check to list all of the tables in the database that it has access to. It now ran into an error because it went to the wrong location. It says, let me check if there's an existing implementation. It now finds the correct implementation script, and now I'm gonna let this agent just go ahead and run that script. What's happening in these little containers here is actually the agent using the terminal to go and run whatever script that we're looking for. And here we can see in the terminal, we actually got the response. Touching campaign analytics, we have now sent 50 emails in our campaign. We have a 9 open rate and 4 have been bounced. And so not only has this ran in the terminal, but we've also passed all of this information to our database. So if we then refresh the left-hand side, we can now see in real time that the email sent has been updated to 50. The delivery rate has gone up to 92%. We now have 14 opened emails, and that was just for the campaign analytics. But now we can also run a check for the daily analytics. So we're just going to run another prompt here saying, can you now check the daily campaign analytics for this instantly automation and store it in the DB. And so once again, the agent's gonna plan the next steps. It's gonna go through the daily email script that it has inside of the implementation folder. And we could see here that we have the instantly analytics markdown file as well as the instantly analytics in the instruction folder. So it knows exactly what to do. And we can see here, guys, that 25 emails have been sent today. It also shows us the instantly email account addresses that we're actually using. And so we can verify that the agent on the right-hand side in the Agentic OS has actually stored all of the data correctly in our database by actually going ahead and checking it. And so here we can see that ever since December 9th, the agent has been consistently storing the analytics on the daily campaign. So today's now December 11th, and we have 5 separate rows of all the different email addresses that we're using to run this test campaign. It's showing that each email address has sent 5 emails today. A couple of them have bounced, and it's been updated perfectly into the database. And so now if this was for a client, they would easily be able to see how our AI employee is actually performing just by going to this page right here. So boom, there we go. We see the daily campaign performance has actually been mapped into the front end, right? So we can easily keep track of all of this, which is like actually mind-blowing, right? Because in one prompt, it didn't just do the API call, it also did the data store, and it improved itself because there was an error when we ran that first prompt. So now it's going to recursively improve. Now this is something we'll get into in a little bit later, and that's just example number 1. This next example is gonna take things to a whole nother level. All right, guys, example number 2 is just nuts. So this prompt here says, I want you to scrape 100 men's health clinics in Illinois, USA, refine them with Apify agent number 2, store them in the Google Sheets, create an instantly campaign called Men's Health Clinics Chicago, and push all of these new leads there. Now on the left-hand side in the implementation folder, we could see that we have the enrich leads py script, we have the create sheet py script, and we have the Apify lead sheet py script. So it's gonna use all 3 scripts to actually conduct this, as well as in the instruction folder, which is the markdown file, we have the Apify lead sheet, and we have the instantly push markdown file. So it's gonna be using a total of 5 files to actually complete this task. And so now I'm just going to send this in, and I'm gonna try my best to walk you guys through exactly what's going on. The agent has now read the Apify lead sheet, the instantly lead sheet, the instantly push sheet, the Apify push sheet, and it's now going to run everything and create a plan. So it has the scripts, it's finding the scripts. It now says, I understand the complete workflow, and it gives us a beautiful to-do list that we are now viewing. The agent then has gone ahead and said, starting the lead generation pipeline, this will scrape 100 men's health clinics in Illinois, enrich them with contact details with Apify agent number 2, and store them in the Google Sheets. Now I haven't clicked any other button. It has just gone ahead and done this. Yeah, now I'm gonna open up the terminal here on the left-hand side, and we can see once again that it originally found a minor error, and now it has completely started running without me doing anything. So while this is running, I wanna show you what it actually has started, what API call it has actually made. So if we just close down the cursor page and we open up Apify and we go to the console, we'll now be able to see that this Google Maps scraper is working in real time, and it's been running for the past 40 seconds. And so this first step is going to operate until we get our 100 leads. And then we'll talk about what the agent's gonna do next. Okay, there we go. So it has hit the 100 lead threshold, and it has just immediately gone to saying it succeeded, right? So now it is literally past the next tool call, which is the website scraper. So in real time, guys, right, what has happened? It has done the 100 lead scrape and it has stored the leads inside of this Google Sheets. So if we scroll all the way to the right-hand side of this Google Sheets and we open up Men's Health Clinics Chicago, you can see here there's now 100 leads in this list. And it's not finished yet because we now want to refine and get all of the information from these leads by actually getting their emails, getting their LinkedIn, getting their Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And that is what this next lead scrape is doing. So first step has already been completed in this agentic workflow without us doing anything. And now we can see that it's going to move on to next steps. Now, we've also added a little step in the script here to give us a rating out of 5 to see how accurate these leads that we're scraping actually are to what we want to get, right? So every single one of these that have a 5 out of 5 are the exact type of business that we want to be marketing this campaign towards. So a first example here would be like the Chicagoland's Men's Health in Oaktown. That's a very accurate type of scrape, and that gave us a 5 out of 5 rating. But we see here this has a 3.7 out of 5 rating, and that's because this is a transition hair solutions for men that are balding. That's not necessarily the type of lead that we want. So we can also refine this a little bit further by grabbing only the 5 out of 5 matches, right? And that's why we added that rating system in there. And like, once again, all I did to make sure the agent could do this was through prompting in the right-hand side of the chat. And so now what's happening in the next step of this workflow is it's using the URL that we grabbed from all of these different businesses. We can see here in the C column, we have all of these websites, and it's going to check different pages on their websites to actually try and find all of their contact information. So like, you know, it could be like nike.com/about, nike.com/contact us, blah, 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 blah. And in that way, this agent is now going to find all of those contact information URLs. And so this is where I want to get into why the parallel framework is going to be so important, and this II framework, the implementation folder and the instruction folder are going to be so game changing. And that's because we can be running a bunch of these agents in parallel. Meaning, what is happening right now is only using one of these scripts that you see on the left-hand side. And so technically speaking, if we had 100 different Python scripts that the agent can go ahead and utilize, then we can have 100 different parallel agents that are working on each one of these scripts. So maybe one of them is sending phone calls, maybe one of them is doing this scrape, maybe one of them is doing an email automation, maybe one of them sending text messages, and these will all be running in parallel. Now, the other beautiful point that I want to knock home here, guys, is that if we had this type of automation working in something like n8n or make.com, when it runs into something like this HTTP error code, we would have had to manually go in there, fix the automation, and restart it. But the beautiful thing about having it in the coding framework and having a coding agent actually doing this work is that it's going to grab that error, it's going to improve it, or it's going to ignore it, because sometimes it'll just, in this case, it's just searching up a page that doesn't exist. So it can just continue doing different page searches and it'll continue working. In n8n or make.com, this would just fundamentally stop the workflow and your productivity will actually come to a standstill. Now, another reason why this even became possible is that our agents now kind of have this super long memory context windows and this super long runtime windows, meaning that they'll never like time out anymore. And that's really important for these type of workflows, because we can see here that the Google Maps scraper, right, took 4.5 minutes. And this website API scraper is already taking 7.5 minutes. And so in total, this workflow has so far been working for 12 minutes. And like, I could have literally not even been on the computer and this would have still been running. And so like, for the first time with these newer models, this is now possible. And this is why I'm telling you guys that like n8n is in for a world of hurt, because this is going to completely replace what we were previously using as our agentic workflow systems. And to make sure that like we are still only on one prompt, you can always verify this by looking in the top right corner. That is the most recent prompt that we've sent in so far, which is the single prompt that has done, this 13-minute workflow so far. Now, you guys may be wondering, if you've never used Apify or if you've never built an agentic workflow, you might be like worried about the costs of this type of, system. And I want to just show you guys how cheap it is. So if we go into the left-hand side and we look at our previous runs, we can see that this workflow, for example, has costed 41 cents for the Google scrape and 3 cents for the scraper API. So in total, we're getting 100 qualified leads for about 45 cents. So guys, now that that's happening, I want to show you the parallel agent example with our third example workflow. So in the top right-hand corner, while this agent here is working on finalizing the scraping and the optimization that we can see on the left-hand side, I'm just going to literally open up a brand new chat and I'll drag it over so you guys can see it. And so here we have this chat right here. And what we're going to run this agent through is a YouTube video edit. So I'm going to go and find a YouTube video and we're just going to send it in. I want to show you guys how that works as well. So this uses the Clap API, and here let's find a good example. Actually, let's find an example on my channel. So we're just going to grab this nano banana video here, and I'm going to copy in that URL, and I'm just going to tell the agent literally edit this video, and I'm going to paste it in. So the agent then goes, let me search your code base for any video editing scripts. I have found the video editing script. You have a Clap API integration that could generate shorts from YouTube videos. Let me read the script to run it for you. It then puts in that YouTube URL to that command. And now I'm just going to set it as an allow list. So I'm only showing you guys this run command question because we can now skip all of these run commands. We could let the agents just do all of this on its own. But just to show you guys the example, I'm just going to click allow list for it to go ahead and actually go and do it. And while that's happening, guys, we could also see that the scraping agent has actually been experiencing some problems with some of the pages that it needed to scrape. And then it solved it. So it was sitting on 62 out of 85 pages that it needed to complete for us. And then it actually by itself got through that error. And now it's moved on to page 63 out of 85. Again, without us doing anything. It's still the same prompt that you guys could see in the top right-hand corner. And it looks like this workflow is working as well. So I'm just going to open it up in another terminal. And we could see that the YouTube URL has begun to edit. So to double check that that workflow is actually working, I'm going to open up the Clap API backend. And here we can see in the dashboard that that video is now 19% edited. Now, the beautiful thing about this edit workflow is that it's also going to store it back into our operating system. So I'm also going to open up the Creator OS operating system and we're going to enter in. And inside of our active AI agents, we have this video to shorts editor page. And once the videos are done being edited, it'll be populated onto that page and I'll be able to show you guys that. And so now right now we have two concurrent agents that are doing tasks for us. Okay, awesome. So we could see here that the agent has now finished the entire scrape running workflow. It has now started, it has now said that that out of the 85 requests, we've had 63 of them successfully complete. So if we go back into Agentic OS and we head into men's health clinics, we can now see an absurd amount of emails and contact information that has been scraped from each one of these brands, right? And we don't just have the business contact of one location, but it actually was able to scrape every single location that was associated to like Ageless Men's Health, for example, as well as this list right here, right? So that is really, really powerful stuff. And now what we're gonna be able to do is pass this over to the Instantly campaign. All right, so we just got a success notification. The agent's now just gonna give us all of this information. So it says done. Here's the summary of what it did. It created the Chicago Men's Health campaign. It gave us the campaign ID, and it's telling us the URL link that we can use to view it, which is pretty absurd. But if we just refresh the left-hand side, we should be seeing the Chicago Men's Health campaign. There we go. And if we open this up, we should also be seeing all the leads that are in here. And there we go, right? So it did every single step in that workflow without us having to do anything other than prompt, right? So that was the example of number one there. And it also shows us in this dropdown of all the actual lead contacts that were pushed correctly to that database. Cool, so now we're just waiting on the last workflow, which is the video edit. And then I can actually break down everything and how this works. And so we're sitting at a 99% edit completion rate. So we just gotta wait a couple more minutes for that. Now for the Instantly automation, right? We could have gone another step further and we could have already created the sequence message, which it already actually did. Wow, that's insane. It actually already did that. That is wild. Okay, so it just filled out the reach out information. Now we can obviously, add on top of this because the point that I wanted to knock home here was that the beautiful thing about these type of workflows is that it allows us to focus on the most high leverage part of each workflow and like actually manually touch the most high leverage part. And so like in a cold email automation, the most important thing is the sequence message. It's the outbound message that you're actually sending. And so if we are building a workflow that does 99.9% of the work, then that gives us all the time in the world to make the best outreach message. And so for example, let's just read what we got here. Hi, first name. I came across company name while researching top clinics in Chicago. I'm building Dr. OS, an agentic operating system designed specifically to scale practices like yours. It automates your entire marketing pipeline end to end. It shows them all of the different possibilities that we could run them through, shows them 3 core examples: LinkedIn growth with our networking agents, video content with our content creation workflows, and appointment setting with our inbound phone agents. It's like having a full stack marketing team, but it runs entirely on AI. Are you open and interested in seeing how this works? And then it uses the name of the email address that we are sending that with. Now that we have some time to talk about the shorts editing system, I want to talk about what makes this specific agentic workflow so great. So, we could just paste in a YouTube URL here and generate the clips, right? But what also has to happen is the agent needs to download these videos and store them in a database so that, other clients can access it, because this is my Clap API backend, right? So if I was editing content on behalf of clients in this specific workflow, we then need the edited videos to be stored in their database. And so if I had another agentic OS that was connected to their database, then it would have been able to store this directly in there. And you guys will see that example. Once it completes, the agent should then start downloading all of these clips and storing them in our own specific database. All right, awesome. So the workflow has finished, but there was a little bit of an error. So in the right-hand side, we can see that we have the 5 shorts that were generated. And so now to make the workflow improve itself, I'm going to explain the error to the agent and have it actually go ahead and fix the implementation and instruction folders in our database to actually make sure that next time it'll immediately start downloading the videos, processing them, and adding them to the database. Here in the logs of the terminal here, we could see that it has now started using the folder from the videos that we have now edited, and we got an API status of 200, which is a success status. It has found the 5 video shorts that we needed to export and download, and it's grabbing the correct name. So we can double check that by seeing what the name of the title is here by comparing it to the titles here. So here, the first video that it's downloading says turn 2D floor plans into photorealistic 3D renderings, and that is this video right here. And it comes with a virality score, it comes with a transcript, and the agent actually does auto captions as well. So now what we're hoping to do is seeing this stored in our database. And so right now the agent is now recursively improving the clap generate shorts Python script. And that's why I wanted to show you that as example number 3, because this is how we can actually recursively improve it, right? So previously what I was doing is I was sending in the YouTube URL, I was waiting for it to finish, and then I was sending in another prompt for it to download and export. But now that the agent knows how to do all of those steps by itself, it can put all of those steps into one single workflow so that all we have to do, just like with this lead scraping and lead storage, is just send in that one prompt instead of having to send in multiple prompts. All right, guys, so to verify that all of this is working, I just went into that database table in the video to shorts table here, and we can see that now on December 11th, today, we have added another 5 videos to this table. And so on the front end now, if we just like reopen the preview page, we should be able to see those edited videos. So I have automate content creation pipeline, instantly convert scripts into slide decks, turn complex code bases into 5th grader friendly infographics, turn 2D floor plans into photorealistic 3D renderings in seconds. And all of these clips have been stored properly, right? So now I can go and review these videos. And if I wanted to, I could just take them to the upload and schedule posts page. I can blast these posts across all of my socials. And the reason why I wanted to show you guys that as the third example is because in real time, I was able to improve the workflow so that the next time that I just add a YouTube URL, it's going to be able to do that full end-to-end process where it edits the videos, polls for the response, then downloads the response and exports them to the database. And so to iterate on top of these workflows only takes a couple of prompts, takes a couple of minutes. And that, in a nutshell, guys, is the 3 examples. So now that we've fixed that third example, guys, I wanted to just show you what it looks like when we can tell that that workflow is perfected. So I grabbed a new YouTube video that I've created. I sent it into the chat. And now we can see in the logs that it's giving us really clean explanation of what's going on. So the video has been sent in. It has a different user ID. And the first parent job has been stored in the database. So if we go into our app once again, we can now see this new job processing row, meaning that it's grabbed the correct video and it's doing the 15 minutes worth of polling, right? So the videos could take up to 15 minutes to completely edit, and it knows that. It knows exactly what it should do in that step. So it's stored step 1, it did step 1.5, and now it's working on step 2, which is going to be polling for the next 15 minutes, and you'll be able to see all of this polling happening right here. And so now in the logs, it's just showing us the generated shorts with their title, with their virality score, and it's showing us the next step that it's moving on to. So it's now completed step 2, completed step 3, and it's now working on step 4, which is exporting the clip. So now I can tell, right, that this is absolutely working how we want it to. And we're just going to be waiting on the left-hand side to receive these new videos. So we have 12 rows in the database right now, and we're looking for this to get to 17 rows with these 5 new video scripts. And this is based on my video here called The Boring AI Niches Making New Millionaires in 2026. All right, so video number 1 has been downloaded. Video number 2 has been downloaded. We're working on number 3. All right, last step, it's downloading the last video. There we go. So it says workflow complete, downloaded files. Very nice. Desktop notification sent. And then it also says that the database has been updated with 5 clips. Okay, that's a really good sign. So this is the moment of truth here. I'm just going to refresh this database and we should see 5 more videos pop in there. There we go. So we then head over to the preview page. We should see those 5 new videos inside of the video to shorts agent tab. So if we go in here, we can now see AI is disrupting labor, not software. And that was that first video. The 3 overlooked AI service opportunities, video clones, voice agents, and physical robots. The AI economy equation, 3-step formula to systemize high ROI labor. Look at this, guys. This is pretty freaking nuts, right? And so we can actually go into these videos. The first thing that we need to be looking for is a form of labor that can now be automated for the first time ever. Look at that. So whether that's generating sales,
that is so
whether
wild.
that's creating. So it gave us the virality score, it did the captions and everything. So this example number 3 has now been actually completed in real time. So you guys saw me actually edit an entire Python script that had the agentic workflow, and through prompting, we were able to get the agents to recursively improve it. And now, in my opinion, that's working perfectly. So now, guys, we can go into the presentation and I can explain the II framework, how all of this works, so that you guys can learn how everything works. And then we'll build our own first agentic system from scratch. All right, guys, welcome to part 3 of this masterclass, where my goal here is to, as simply as possible, explain why the coding agents are more powerful for building agentic workflows than platforms like n8n and make.com. So essentially, right, when we have something like Claude Code or Gemini 3 inside of our terminals, it's able to use the coding language to produce any type of outcome that we want. And in this way, it's able to also recursively go through errors. Now, when you guys are coding like any type of app, for example, you've experienced this where the agent will find an error in one of your prompts and it'll go through the error and it'll help you debug it. And the exact same thing is happening in these specific use cases. Now, it gets taken to another level because Claude Code and the Anthropic team in general have come out with the Claude Skills. And the Claude Skills was the first type of architecture that used this markdown MD files to actually instruct our agents on specific workflows or specific skill sets. And so what this has allowed us to do is unlock a whole bunch of use cases with our coding agents. And so inside of one terminal, right, when you have a bunch of different markdown files of different skill sets, we can have different agents doing these skills or conducting these skills in parallel. And so the productivity that we're about to see in the economy is going to absolutely skyrocket because of this. Now, I want to give you guys a good example here. So let's say that I was having to, file my taxes, and we had 2 options of someone to ask to do our taxes for us, right? So we have Mahesh, who's a mathematical genius. And in this case, this would be like our traditional ChatGPTs or our traditional Anthropic Claude Code models. And then we have Barry. Barry is a tax professional. Now, he may not be as, capable or as smart as Mahesh, but he is really an expert in this domain. And so he's able to apply his skill set to helping you fill the taxes out in the exact way that you wanted to get them done. And that is how real business is conducted, right? So Mahesh is kind of like this super genius AI model that has all of these different options and different pathways to complete one task. But all we're looking for is a consistent executable task that we can tell it to do every single time to give us a predictable outcome. And so this was the massive breakthrough with the skills MD file. And the reason being is that we can then create people like Barry as our AI employees through these MD files. To take that example further, guys, is the MCP server concept, right? So an MCP server essentially allows us to give all of the capabilities of a piece of software to our coding agents. And we previously thought that that was in and of itself the biggest breakthrough and basically all we needed to conduct these specialized AI employee agents to do whatever we want. But then we realized, right, comparing to the first example, that if we gave someone like Mahesh the MCP server, it would have way too many possibilities to do the exact same outcome. And in this way, the agents will hallucinate, they will run into errors, they will have a whole bunch of problems actually coming to an output that we are looking for in a consistent manner. And so Anthropic and all the other big AI firms have understood this as well. And they were working hard to figuring the solution for this. And once again, this is where this skills MD file comes into play. And so another way to understand why we want to use this file system, and we'll get into the AI framework right after this, is that AI is simply just too smart for its own good for us to create outcomes that businesses are actually looking for things that actually will produce revenue, because it won't create enough consistency. And in this way, you can jeopardize your reputation, you could jeopardize your relationship with your clients, and this can send you down a pretty nasty rabbit hole just by using agentic workflows through MCP servers. But when we introduce a file system to the MCP server, you guys are going to see just how powerful each agent can now become, because it can go and check these files before executing any MCP call. And in this way, guys, it'll actually work a whole bunch faster. It'll use way less tokens, meaning it'll cost us less money, and our outcomes are going to be very predictable. On top of that, the file system can continuously improve. So let's say we created a low-level file system for a skill to go and send messages on Instagram. Well, if we built it out just with a simple prompt and it starts working decently, we can iterate on top of this workflow until this skill file is written in a way that the agent will know exactly what to do when it goes and checks it. And so when it goes and grabs this file, it can then take the information, take the exact script from this file, and head over to the MCP server to conduct whatever we need it to do. In this way, we have unlocked ridiculous amount of efficiency. And that leads us, guys, to the II framework. Now, the II framework is just two folders inside of our code base, and they relate directly to one another. So the first folder is the information layer, where we are just in simple English explaining to our agents what we want them to do. And we can feed these agents with an initial information file, like a simple markdown file, that'll explain how we want to do it at a high level. And so once again, if we were using the social messages example, we would show it which API key we're using, which username we want the messages to be sent on, and that will be the initial information layer. The same thing relates in the implementation layer, where we're just giving it the exact Python script to go ahead and execute this file and execute this API call on our behalf. Now, over time, the information layer and the implementation layer will be working in unison to evolve and improve itself. And in this way, we've actually had a massive breakthrough in actual consistency of outcomes. Now, I want to give you guys a couple graphics to make this, knock home a little bit easier. So what we have on the screen is a diagram showing us a bunch of different Appify API calls. Appify is a platform that you guys saw in example 1 and 2, where we scraped a bunch of leads, and then we refined those leads and put them into a Google Sheets. But Appify has so many different API endpoints, right? So this example in the top right could be like scraping leads on Instagram. This one could be scraping leads on LinkedIn. This could be scraping realtors on Zillow, and the list goes on and on. So let's say though, inside of our operating system, we had 6 different use cases for Appify to be used by our agents. Well, each one of these workflows can then be instructed exactly on how to be conducted with these markdown files. And these markdown files will have great detail in actually what to do in terms of using each specific Apify API call. Because previously, like we were talking about in the MCP example, if we just had the MCP and I said, go scrape me leads for Instagram, it won't exactly know which Apify endpoint I'm referring to. But now it will, because it can read each one of these files before it does anything else. And this leads to another breakthrough that Claude has introduced, or Anthropic has introduced, called the claude.md file. Now, the claude.md file can be used for Gemini, for ChatGPT, and all of these other LLMs. But what the claude.md file is kind of like the orchestrator agent. So every time that we add in an AI model, and in this case, let's say that this is Claude Opus 4.5, it'll go and read the claude.md file before it does anything else. And so I can quickly show you guys the claude.md file that we have inside of Agentic OS. So here we have the claude.md, and if we open it up, we can actually read through what every single agent will actually read before doing anything inside of our code base. So it says, this file provides guidance to Claude Code when working with code in this repository. Your role is to be an autonomous workflow architect. The II framework. You operate exclusively within the II information and implementation framework. You manage two critical files. The information, which is the source of truth, which includes the SOP, which is standard operating procedures, the context of these operating procedures, and the actual goals that we want to achieve through each one of these workflows. In contrast with MCP servers, we have now introduced the implementation Python scripts. These implementation Python scripts are deterministic, just like how business workflows are deterministic. You hire a human being to go and do a task, they are going to use a tool to complete that exact task that you're looking for. And that is exactly what's happening with the implementation Python scripts. And so our goal in the directive here is to not just write code, but to recursively anneal or recursively improve the workflows until they are 100% reliable and autonomous. And so we run through these agents with this loop right here, which ingests the information by reading the markdown file of whatever goal that we want it to do. We will then have it write code or modify the code that's already existing in the implementation Python scripts to achieve this goal. It'll then go ahead and run the script autonomously, or it can simulate an execution if it's a non-executable env, which is not that important for right now. But the most important step is actually in step 4, because unlike in n8n or make.com, if there is a failure, the agent actually knows what to do. And this is very important. The agent will then analyze the traceback. It'll look right back into the implementation Python script, and it'll immediately update the information MD with a warning or a constraint explaining why it failed, so that in future instances, it never makes that mistake again. And this ties back to that deep history, that deep memory that I was talking about earlier. Now, if it goes through a failure, and it's able to actually create a success from its implementation or from its fix, then it wants to analyze the efficiency that it just created and update the script. So if the script was slow, complex, or refactored, then update the information MD with the best practices that was just recently discovered. Now, we've also taken a couple of rules of engagement, right? So we told it to never regress, meaning before writing code, you must always check the information MD file for past failures. Do not attempt methods that are flagged as failed or deprecated. With other API services and other software tools that we're using also evolving, this is very important. Because previously, when a new AI model or a new tool comes out, the previous one would get deprecated, meaning we would have to go inside of something like n8n and completely change that workflow or update that workflow to use the newer tool. But in this way, it'll actually understand that on the fly. Now, for us as the humans to actually understand what's going on, I also instructed it to give us an output format. So when it does complete a cycle of any workflow that we're asking for, and you guys saw it in the examples, you want to give us a 3-step breakdown. You want to give us the status of what happened. Was it a success or a failure? I want them to tell us what actions were taken. So a brief summary of the code changes or the codes that were executed. And also what memory has been updated in the information.md files. Now, the next step on top of this is giving the agent the actual tool stack to complete any task. And that lives inside of the .env file. Now the .env file, I'm not going to show my .env here, but that has all of your API keys, all of the keys that are associated to your project. And so the agent will use these env files in the script. So for example, if we were to go and look at the Instantly Analytics Python script, we would see that it's actually written out what this script actually does. And there's certain points in the script that needs to use the API key. And so when you guys fork Agentic OS and you use it in your own code bases and your own instances, when you try running the Instantly Analytics API call and you tell the agent to go and do that, it'll either use the API that's already in the env. So here it says go and get that API key from the env. But if it's not there, then we want to raise this error and show it to our user, aka us, so that we know what we need to do to actually get this workflow to work, which is adding the API key to the env. And so every workflow that we have, whether it's Google Sheets, whether it's Instantly, whether it's Appify, whether it's AirShare, all of these need specific API keys to actually conduct. But the beautiful thing about this, and the contrast between sharing AI agents on n8n and the contrast with sharing code bases with this AI framework, is that once you guys fork this project and add in your API keys, every single one of these scripts are ready to go from the get-go. There's no more extra wiring that's needed other than adding in your keys. And then you can obviously wire them or configure them to your own liking. All right, so now let's use another graphic to help you guys understand this a little bit better. So now imagine we've implemented all 6 of those Appify API workflows, and they're all working in the way that we wanted it to. Well, now we can condense that information MD file into one file, because most likely you guys are going to have a bunch of different tools that your agent will be able to utilize. And so what we want to make sure happens is each tool call is specified, whether that's Appify, whether that's HeyGen for creating video clones, whether that's Instantly for sending email campaigns, whether that's Vapi for sending phone calls outbound or receiving phone calls inbound, and our database. And our database is really the massive breakthrough that I'm seeing no one else really talk about, because the organization aspect of this goes to another level when your agent puts all of this data into one database, because then we can show the results on the front end like we're doing on Creator OS. And so what I did is I built Creator OS with this in mind. Every single one of our database tables inside of the Creator OS project is already prepared to store the output of these agentic workflows. And I'm just going to pull up my database here to explain what this is. So here we have about 45 different tables, and each table is ready and constructed to receive the exact API response from each one of these API calls. So with our social media engine, we use AirShare. And AirShare has like 92 API calls. And I made a whole video breaking down each one of those API calls, right? And what we had to do previously was just build out the database schema to receive this information. So if we look inside of like analytics accounts, even though this is empty, we can see that we've instructed it to store the correct platform, the correct account identifier, which user is actually on this specific plan, and the analytics data that's being stored. So now when I give Claude Code or Gemini access to this database, and I tell it we want to store the analytics from our social media posts, it'll actually go and look at all of our tables in the database and identify that we already have a schema that is ready to go. And so this takes us to the next stage or the next evolution of how these agentic workflows are going to operate. Because right here, what you're looking at is just the high-level instructions on how each tool is actually used. But this isn't a workflow. This is just information that the agent needs to know. So for example, HeyGen, we have a bunch of different AI avatars. And these AI avatars have something called an avatar ID. And so inside of our information MD file, we're able to instruct which avatar ID relates to which person. So if I were to, make a workflow that says, create a winning script and then send that winning script to Daniel's avatar ID will actually be inside of this information MD file. So it'll actually know how to use that in an end-to-end workflow. So now let me try and show you a graphic of example number 2 as our workflow would actually operate. So this double-I framework here was example number 2, where we used the Google Maps API scrape on Appify to get the website address, the location, and the name of the businesses that we want to be contacting. We then passed that information to the next API call, which is to go on a deep web search. This deep web search then grabs the base URL and searches up for other pages, like the Nike.com, Nike.com/contact, Nike.com/about. And through this scrape, we are then able to get their email information, their social information, their phone numbers, and potentially even employee email addresses that are associated to the brand. This allows us to then send it to 2 places: our CRM, which is our database, aka Creator OS, and our instantly email campaign. And so this workflow in and of itself only needs one information MD file and one implementation Python script. It'll say, make this API call and check until it's done. Once it finishes, pass it into the next workflow. Once that finishes, pass it into the Google Sheets, and so on and so forth until we reach the instantly API campaign, which will then actually just start sending emails on our behalf. And that parlayed into example 2.5, I guess, where we did the analytics call and we looked at the actual performance from this workflow. And so what this allows us to do is show any non-technical clients that we have exactly how our agents are performing. So here inside of the instantly email super agent, this is just showing that output that I was just talking about. So we've been running this for 3 days and the consistency of this is already working pretty well. And so now all we have to do as the operator is work on a really nice sequence message to get the attention of the people that we're emailing. And let's say we go for another couple of weeks and this workflow doesn't create the outcome that we're looking for, then we would then find a new Appify scrape to find the exact client's email addresses that we want to be hitting. And so in this way, like I was saying earlier, what does this allow us to do? It allows us to work on the most important aspects of the said workflow and spend a lot of time on it. So instead of us having to manually scrape the leads, manually refine the leads, manually store the leads, or even manually start the email campaign, we are focused just on the sequence message because that is what actually is going to move the needle for the specific workflow. Now I just want to go on a little tangent here before we go and build our own agentic system together. And I want to explain why this is going to help my agency and all the people in my academy that are building operating systems scale much faster. So each time that you have a client for an AI operating system, you fork the original code base. And so like we would be forking the original Creator OS code base that you guys are seeing right here. Now the difficulty of this in the past, before the agentic workflows hit the mainstream and were actually strong enough for us to do what we want to do with them, is that we had to manually wire every single AI agent to the operating system, right? So we would have had to wire the Twitter outreach agent, the LinkedIn outreach agent, the Instagram outreach agent, the video to shorts, the YouTube competitors, the 2.2 influencer, the Gemini workflows. Like even just the Gemini workflows is 5 separate AI agents that create all of these ridiculous video outputs. But the difficulty, and we have sold over 150 operating systems, and so I've seen the pain points that people are having with this, and that is the time sink that you would have to go through to, add each n8n instance to a workflow and then connect that workflow to the database. But if all of that is going to be wired into the Agentic OS side, then it's really just about forking this Agentic OS, adding your API keys, adding your database, and within like 20 to 30 minutes now, you're gonna have a fully working AI operating system that uses this Agentic OS on the back end to conduct basically everything that we're trying to get done. And so what I'm gonna be working on as fast as humanly possible is evolving this Agentic OS codebase to use every single type of tool that Creator OS has to offer. And in this way, when someone comes into the academy and wants to get Creator OS, they're going to be able to actually get this launched much faster, especially if they're non-technical. Now, we still had people that were technical able to go ahead and do this, but without something like Agentic OS, it still created a lot of pain points for a lot of non-technical people that wanted to see what AI operating systems had to offer. All right, guys, so we made it to stage 4, where we're actually going to now build out our own agentic AI workflow to create your first AI employee inside of this operating system. And so you guys are going to get 2 things. You're going to get the entire system prompt that we're going to send into our coding environment. And I just want to quickly now explain the tools that are needed. So the goal today, guys, is to show you example number 2, where we did an Apify lead scrape, and then we did an Apify lead enrichment, and then we stored those leads inside of a Google Sheets. And so the API keys that you need is your Google Sheets service account and your Apify API key. Then you're also going to need some type of coding agent. In this example, I'm going to be recommending Opus 4.5, which is Claude Code, and I would be recommending using Cursor as our IDE. But I would also say that anti-gravity works very well for this as well. So it's up to you on which platform you want to use in that use case. Now let's go through the actual system prompt before we get started so we can understand what we're actually instructing our agents to do. So we're going to be saying, I want to build an agentic automation system using the II framework. And this explains the II framework and the project directories. So we have the instruction and information layer that has the SOPs, the APIs, the docs, and the constraints. And then we go through the actual framework rules, right? So every framework has 2 files. It has the instruction file of what and why we use this tool, and the actual implementation, which is the how and the actual tool calls or the executable Python scripts. We then want the agent to go through a loop where it reads the instructions in the instruction.md and uses the code implementation in the implementation Python file. It'll then execute whatever task that we're looking for and self-anneal or self-improve, like the Pokemon example I was giving you earlier. If it fails, I don't want you to stop working. I want you to fix the code, update the instructions, and explain what failed and why to us. If it succeeds, then you can update the instruction with a nice little check mark of what worked and what happened and what went well. We never want the agent to regress, and so the way we can never regress is by using this information MD file once again to check for the past failures that have potentially happened and the limitations that exist or the constraints that exist inside of each software that we're using inside of our operating system. Now, when we're instructing our coding agents to build our first workflow, the type of prompt that we want to be sending in is something like, I want you to build, followed by the description. An example would this be, I want you to build a workflow that takes a YouTube URL, sends it to Google Gemini to analyze the video, process the script, and store the results in the database. So what we're going to do, guys, and you have access to this, is I would recommend going into the Google Docs and copying all of this, just like so. And then we're going to head into Cursor and get this baby started. All right, so to get started, right, we're in the Cursor homepage here. We're just going to click Open Project, and here's where we can select a brand new folder where our agentic operating system will live. And so I'm going to open this up. I'm just going to write test agentic OS, and we're going to create that. It'll start off brand new, nice and fresh, and we're going to open that puppy up. So now we're going to just drag over and open up the chat widget to a little bit bigger than usual. And we're just going to paste in that system prompt, AKA that first real initialized prompt that we wanted to get this entire workflow started. And in this use case, we're also going to talk about the first workflow that we're going to be working on. And that is the Apify lead scrape that you saw in example number 2. Following that massive system prompt, we then said the first agentic workflow I want us to build out is an Apify lead scrape that uses the Google Maps scraper on Apify. We will then store those leads into our Google Sheets, and we will use the websites received from that initial scrape to start Apify agent number 2, which is the deep website crawler. The first Apify agent uses this call on Apify, and what I did was I just grabbed that URL link of the actor. So if we were to open this up, we are using this Google Maps scraper on Apify, and so all I did was I copied that URL address, and then I pasted it in that Cursor chat, and then I grabbed the second step of the Apify workflow, which uses this website social scraper API. I grabbed that website URL so that the agent can go and read both of those websites and understand how the API call is made. Because here it actually just lays out in JSON how the API call is actually made for this to be successful. I then said, once done, I want you to add all the leads in a clean manner to the same Google Sheets row that the first Apify agent has also stored. And then I followed it up by giving all of my API keys. And so I would recommend you guys front loading this with all of your API keys as well, going grabbing your Google Sheets, grabbing your Appify, potentially even grabbing your database API information if you've gone ahead and forked Creator OS already, and sending in this prompt. And so now we should be looking at something like this to-do list. So the agent's first going to create the framework directory structure here. And so here we can see it's already created the implementation and instruction folders, and this is where all of those specific files will live. It'll then create essentially the high-level top-tier prompt, which is the system prompt in another way to think about it, which is the claude.md file, because every time that we add in a new agent, that agent will go and read the claude.md file before doing anything else. And so let's say like we wanted to spin up a whole bunch of different chats, they will all read this file before doing anything. After that, we're going to create a README, which is just documentation of the code base, so the agent will have an understanding of that. We're going to then create the env file and the env file example so that we can actually store our API keys in there. And so yeah, I'm just going to, give this a sec, and we'll wait for the agent to finish writing up everything that we need. It has now pushed those API keys into the env file, so that looks really good. And now the actual important part is happening right here, which is the Appify lead scrape MD. And so what this Appify lead scrape MD file is doing is it's just understanding exactly how that first API call is run. And in this way, it'll have its first little, markdown file, and this will be rough. It may not be perfect from the get-go, but it'll at least be good enough for us to get the ball rolling. And so it's created that Appify lead scrape, so we can go in here and read it. And it basically explains that we are using this specific actor, and these are the API endpoints to run it, to get the results and all of that fun stuff, as well as the output fields that we're going to be getting. So we're going to be getting the title of the business, address, phone number, website, their category, their total score, which is a rating of how accurate the scrape is compared to what we're actually looking for. And it actually does take it a step further, which I didn't talk about in this video, which it actually gives you like the exact location in like a cool looking Google Maps URL. Then it explains the second actor, which is the website content crawler. And the content crawler is this actor ID with their own specified endpoints. And what this crawler will do is it'll take an example URL, like the Nike.com example that we were speaking about, and it'll then try and find a maximum of 3 additional pages that are associated to the home directory page, like the contact us, about us, stuff like that, so that it can go and use those pages to find the real contact information, the real social channels that are associated to this specific website. After it does that, it's going to move into the Google Sheets API, where it grabs the authentication via our Google Service account. It then uses a specific spreadsheet ID to then store all of this information into the spreadsheet. It also explains the required scopes that is needed for us to actually go ahead and do this. And now we see on the right-hand side, it's looking to install some requirements. If you guys haven't run any Python code in the past, it's also have to install all of these little requirements, but that'll only take a few seconds. Now it's gone ahead and completed the implementation file for the Appify lead scrape system. And so this one's pretty long. It's 500 lines of code explaining exactly how this is going to work, which is pretty cool. And so what I'm going to do to front load this work is, and also to simplify it for us, is I'm just going to go into Google Sheets and I'm going to create a brand new sheet. So if we just go into blank spreadsheet here, and I'm just going to name this Agentic OS leads test. And then we're just going to set the visibility to anyone with the link. And then we're just going to copy this spreadsheet ID. So I'm just going to give the agent an additional prompt for when it finishes adding all of these requirements. And I'm just going to say that this is the specific spreadsheet ID in Google Sheets I want us to use. And for you guys to tell that you're connected, or your agent is connected to this spreadsheet, you can also tell it to write a test message inside one of the columns. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to say, please write a test message inside of the Google Sheets A column, so I can verify you have full editing access. on this spreadsheet. All right, awesome. So we could also see here that the agent says the dependencies were installed, and it also verified that the script can at least import stuff correctly. And here you can see that the imports have actually been, ran correctly. So that's all good. I mean, we weren't expecting any errors there. So now we really just want to make sure that the Google Sheets is connected properly, and then we can move forward. And so what you guys are seeing here in the response ties back into the claude.md file of how we actually wanted to instruct our agents to respond back to us. So it tells us like the result of its work, the self-annealing loop that it's doing, and the required steps, if any, that are needed. And so here it says, you need to add a Google service account JSON file to authenticate with Google Sheets. The file should be named serviceaccount.json and placed in the project root. Make sure the service account has editor access, which is what we did. And that's what we front loaded that message with. So we said to him, he said, I see you want to use this spreadsheet. Let me update the environment and write a test message to verify access. When you guys are satisfied with this specific tool call, and in this case, it's using the Google Sheets tool call, you can set it as an allow list, meaning it'll never ask you ever again if you want to run it or not. It'll just do it on its own. So I'm just going to set it as an allow list, and it is now popped in that spreadsheet ID. And so the next message that it's sending us is that the service account file has not been found. And so I'm going to go grab my service account file. I recommend you guys do the same. All right, and I'm just going to paste in my service account, and I'm not going to show you guys the account information, but essentially I'm going to block it a little bit, but it looks something like this, and it includes a private key as well. So something like this. Once you paste that puppy in, you're just going to say, this is the service account we need. And so after providing the agent with the account file, it then says, let me create a test script to write a message to your Google Sheets to verify that it's working. And I'm just going to go ahead and let it do that. And so when you share the file or the spreadsheet ID with your coding agent, you also want to make sure that it's not just anyone with the link as a viewer, but anyone with the link as an editor. This will give the coding agent full editing access. Once you do that, then you can copy in the spreadsheet ID and paste it in. I'm going to say this now has full editing capabilities. And so now what we're going to be doing and looking for is the agent literally going into this code and into this Google Sheets and writing a test message. And then we can verify that it's working. And yeah, here we go. All right. So it has sent in this random message, the Agentic OS connection test, and it also added a timestamp, which is pretty nice. And so I'd like to say that we have the full workflow already constructed. That took about 5 minutes. And so now we're just going to test it all out once the agent stops working. All right, so the agent says your first agentic workflow is ready to run and your setup is completely done. So this will scrape businesses from Google Maps using Apify. It'll then write the leads to our Google Sheets. It'll crawl each business's website for additional data, and then it'll update that same row in the Google Sheets with that enriched website contact information. And so now I'm going to tell it to run a specific scrape. And so in this case, guys, let's say that we were looking for gyms in Austin. So I'm going to say, that sounds good. Now, please scrape 100 gym businesses in Austin, USA. And let's see if the entire workflow is good. And so we could pop out that terminal. And it looks like it has started the crawler. And so what we're going to do, guys, is we're just going to minimize the cursor screen here, and we're going to split the screen into two. And we're going to head over to our Apify workspace. We're going to go to the home page, and we can see that it has ran that test scrape of 23 businesses, and now it's directly going into the website scraper API as well. That one will take a little bit more time, but we can see that there was 23 different businesses, gym businesses out in Austin, Texas. So that worked really well. And we're going to look at the Google Sheets, and here we can see at the bottom, we have the Austin Gyms tab. And there we go, right? So we have Equinox Austin, Hyde Park Gym, Gold's Gym, 24 Hour Fitness, Lifetime Fitness, all the gyms basically, which is pretty cool. There's also Best Buy, which is hilarious. That's not a gym, but I mean, maybe for I don't know why that's in there, but that's pretty funny. But cool. So then what it did, right, is gone directly into the next step, which is the contact information lead scrape. So we're going to see how that runs now. And we can see, for example, like the Austin YMCA and all of the different website domains that it tried to search for, right? So it went to Austin YMCA about/leadership, about/our purpose, about/annual report, about/locations. And in this way, like it'll do whatever it can to get to get all the email addresses, all the social accounts that are available on their website. And so right off the bat, I can already identify a couple of ways that we can self-improve this system, where we can kind of tell it, and hope maybe it can also understand that it only got 23 results instead of 100, and we want to actually try and get all the 100. But regardless, the website scrape has now finished as well. And so we can go back into the Google Sheets and we can check if anything has been updated. All right, so the response here says that the workflow was complete. It only found 23 gems because it says here that the Google Maps scraper only found 23 gems, which is fine, but there is one step that it didn't do correctly here. So we're going to also tell it about the website lead scraper and how that needs to be used. I say that like that almost worked perfectly, but the website API scrape gives us even more information, like the contact, email, and social accounts of these specific businesses. And we need to make sure the workflow stores them properly. Can you see contact information from the second Apify API call? It's not saying, let me check what data the website crawler actually returned from that run. And there we go, right? So now if we look at the logs, for example, it's the full structure of Hyde Park Gym, for example. It comes with the Hyde Park Twitter, the Hyde Park Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Now, not all of them will have their email associated as well, which is totally okay, but some of them will, right? So Best Gym 612 has their email address. See here, for example, Castle Hill Fitness has email, has LinkedIn, has Instagram, has Facebook, Twitter, and all of that stuff as well. And so we want to make sure that this is also being stored in the database, and then we can tell that the workflow is actually, working exactly how we want it. So here it says the website crawler found great data like the email, like the LinkedIn profiles, like the Facebook, and it says the issue in my implementation wasn't capturing all of this data. Let me go ahead and fix it, right? So it's now going ahead and fixing that. It's also updating the Python script. It's going to be updating the markdown file so that the information will be understood and the actual execution will be optimized. So now it's actually going ahead and testing this all on its own with a new API call. And so it's going to see if it can actually run this entire crawler, get the correct information, and store it in the database correctly. In this case, it's just the Google Sheets. And one thing that I think it might need to add is some additional headers, because right now we're missing like the email header, we're missing the social accounts headers. And so we need to see if that's actually going to be stored properly. If it is, then I think we're good, but we'll have to check. Okay, wow. So yeah, the agent then went ahead and created Austin Gyms V2. And in Austin Gyms V2, we got the normal stuff like the website and all that other stuff. But then we also got their email address, their LinkedIn, their Instagram, their Facebook as their own individual headers. And so once this scrape finishes, we should see that all being inserted. And we can also instruct the agent to clean up the way that the Google Sheets is actually being designed, right? So right now, for example, the Google Maps location is a very long URL string, and that's getting in the way of this organization that we're seeing on the page because it's overlapping with the email, with the LinkedIn, and all the other columns that we need to actually see if it's being stored or not. And so once this works, that's something that we could also work on to just optimize how it looks. Like for example, if I were to go into the Google Sheets that I'm using in real time, you'll see that it looks a little bit different. So if we go into Agentic OS leads, we can see here that the website has kind of just been condensed, and we actually don't even want to store the Google Maps URL address because we don't care about that. We have the address right here anyways, and we know that these are businesses out in whatever town that we're looking for. And so these are just some ways for you to optimize this workflow a little bit more until it's exactly to your liking. All right, so the agent is finished up. It's now saying, excellent, let me verify the data in Google Sheets. And we can also see here that it's finished up as well. That looks pretty good. And so, for example, like Hyde Park Gym now has like the email and LinkedIn fields, same thing with Lifetime, same thing with Correct Fitness, and so on and so forth. And so we could also verify that in the Google Sheets. So here in the Google Sheets, guys, we can look at what's actually being inserted just to double check everything. And so a great example here would be like the Equinox Austin lead scrape that we got, because it's not just giving us the manager or the front desk. it's probably giving us all of the personal trainers. And so we were able to then hit all of these different email addresses that all work for the same Equinox gym. And that in one scrape gave us like 15, 16 email addresses just for that one gym. And this can just continue so on and so forth across the entire nation, across the entire continent. And we can then send this to the next workflow that you guys saw. But in general, that is essentially how we would build the II framework in a matter of minutes to implement any type of agentic workflow that we're looking for. And we can also instruct a VA or a virtual assistant on how to actually use this type of system. And so we're literally just going to be teaching VAs on how to become prompt engineers in the very near future. Because I'm very sure that this, what you just saw, is going to run the entire economy. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. This was the Agentic AI Workflows Masterclass. And the reason why I wanted to make this video, and if you made it this far, thank you so much. But the reason why I made this video is that in the next Agentic Operating Systems video, I'm going to be showing you my actual Agentic operating system that has every single workflow that runs Creator OS. Like I was saying earlier, I built Creator OS with Agentic AI in mind, and it's officially here. And this was just an example of how powerful this is going to be and how much more we could add into this. So guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.